Hello and welcome again to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and I'm talking with a real old friend, Phil McKinney, who is the President and CEO at CableLabs. Phil, great to see you. It's been far too long.
Great to see you, Martin.
We've been around the world a bit together.
I think we've crossed paths a few times.
We certainly have. Anyway, let's talk about NFV and CableLabs. What is top of your agenda as the big man at the top of CableLabs now, and how are you playing into what's happening with NFV?
Well, CableLabs we're the research and development lab for the cable industry. So we don't build product. Our role really is to work with the vendor ecosystem in the development and design, intellectual properties, and creating new technologies. In this case, we looking to take advantage of the NFV investments that are happening really across the industry to the benefit of the cable operators themselves. The networks are going through a level of transformation. It's really about how do you get to higher speeds, but also, even more important, is how do you get more efficiency out of the network? How do you respond quicker to the request for new products and new services? In the old days of doing 100% proprietary network infrastructures, just cannot make that happen. So NFV is really the platform that not only the cable industry is looking for, but the broad network infrastructure companies are looking to do, is to be able to respond to the changes in the marketplace.
So what are you actually doing on a sort of daily basis? Are the programs going through CableLabs, and what do you bring to the market, to the vendor ecosystem, and so on? Well,
for instance, one of the things that we're announcing here at NFV World is the announcement of an interop lab. Part of what CableLabs has done for the cable industry is bring the vendors together and really kind of resolve the inter-vendor issues of compatibility and interoperability. So we're announcing here today in my keynote that CableLabs is standing up an NFV lab where all the vendors can come and test for interoperability, and then we actually facilitate interop events. So these are one week events where all the vendors come together, they sit shoulder to shoulder, they plug their product together and make sure they work. And that's key for the cable industry, but it's key for the industry as a whole. The ability really to leverage NFV is to get away from proprietary natures. So it's really about how do we drive this level of compatibility and this ability to truly interop between all the vendor systems.
A lot of emphasis in NFV and SDN on open source. What about that? How does CableLabs fit into that? Are you a proponent of open source?
Oh, we're big believers in open source. The cable industry has been big proponents for open source. There's a big project that called RDK. It's really around what's called community source for set-top boxes. And so Comcast runs on RDK, Liberty Global in Europe runs on RDK. So the cable industry has already been a big proponent of that. CableLabs actually operates what's called C3, which is Common Community Code, which is the cable industry's version of contributing code and putting into an open source model. Plus, we also contribute out to the open source community as a whole. So we actually are code contributors, out into the open source platforms. So we're big proponents of it. We think it gives additional leverage. It allows for a shared R&D cost when you can take advantage of work that's already being done in an area that really is not a differentiator, and therefore refocus your R&D spend into those key areas that truly allow you to differentiate what it is you do.
What about membership? Has it grown while you've been in charge?
When I took over CableLabs, we were 25, 28 members, primarily North America, including Canada, US, Mexico, and we had one member in Europe. Today, we now are 57 members, 33 countries. When I got here, our membership covered about 80 million cable customers. Today, we're about 200 million cable customers that are covered by CableLabs. And we are a nonprofit tax-exempt research lab, so we get funded by those members as part of their due structure. And it funds a staff of about 200, 210 people, primarily in Boulder, Colorado, but we have offices in Silicon Valley and in Europe, and Asia now is our fastest growing region.
Do you think there's any inherent potential danger in that? We've seen a lot of consolidation in the industry around the world. We're certainly seeing it in the UK, where I'm from, with the number of mobile operators shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, now possibly going down to 3. Could the same sort of thing happen in cable, and what effect would that have on the competitive market, do you think?
Well, I think there's going to be some level of consolidation. One is just from a standpoint of efficiency. The capital investment cost to build out physical networks is still very high, and it gets harder and harder for smaller companies just to have the means to raise that capital infrastructure. So consolidation brings efficiency, which also then translates into better products, better services, overall better capabilities. I think the regulators, though, won't allow it to get down to be too small. So I think there's going to be, some leveling of, how big does any one company get. But consolidation in any industry, doesn't matter what that industry is. Look, we did the railroads here in the United States. There was 350 railroads at one point, right? Now we're down to less than 6. So I think every industry, same thing with auto manufacturers, you name the industry, everybody goes through these consolidation effects. So there's nothing unique, different, or shocking about the consolidation happening, whether it be in the wireless industry, the cable industry, the network infrastructure companies. It's a natural byproduct as when an industry gets to a certain stage of stability and a certain size of growth, you'll see these consolidations happening.
Phil McKinney, splendid to see you again. Don't leave it so long next time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Martin.